the best I could do, and I talk about it in my book, um, was to show up and to say, while I'm sitting here broken, there's a piece of me that's still alive. It's just the best I can do to tap into her is to wear these hot pink shoes. And that's what I did. I had on all black,
Oh,
the big hat and everything, but my shoes were hot pink because I had to believe I was still alive in there somewhere. I couldn't find me, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew I was there somewhere, and that's all I could do.
welcome to season 4 of the Widow podcast. I'm Karen Sutton, the Widow Coach, and I'll be supporting you through the loss of your life partner so you can find a more positive way through your grief. Whether this is your first episode or you've been with me for a while, I want you to know you are capable of creating something meaningful after loss. And you don't have to do it alone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Widow podcast. Today I have the lovely Maya Dion with us, and we are going to be having an incredible conversation. I know we are, because Maya is incredible. Her energy is infectious. I have been following her work online for, I don't really know how long. I'd say it's a good 4 or so years. I think I found you quite quickly after I started. And I've always quite admired you. And I thought, do you know what? Why do I keep admiring this woman from afar? Let's reach out, let's connect, let's get in touch. So Maya is a widow herself. She is a widow coach. She is known as the bounce back widow, which I think is what really caught my eye when I first found you, because I was looking for people that were going to help me live again, to find life again. And obviously I was doing what I was doing, but I just loved that whole energy. So you're a widow coach, a strategic empowerment coach, a 6 times best-selling author, and all-round awesome human being. So welcome, Maya. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love that you said you were following me because I've been following you. Yes, you're like the Karen Sutton, and like it's amazing. It's amazing to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's so funny, isn't it? How we're all kind of watching each other from afar, admiring what people are doing, and actually, like, let's connect, let's connect. So obviously we have already connected. We've had a lovely conversation before. We got together here on the podcast, and you have very wonderfully agreed to come in as well and support me in my program Finding Hope in Widowhood, which I'm super excited about, because again, your energy and your work is brilliant, and I can't wait for my community to benefit more from you. But let's go back, shall we, Maya? Let's start with your journey and how you entered the world of widowhood, and kind of, yeah, what happened to you, Maya? What's your story?
Well, my story started in 2009. I was, a very typically, I guess, typical young widow or young mom and a young wife. I had gotten married to my husband in 2003. So we were college sweethearts. We couldn't even wait for me to get out of college before we got married. And so the year that I graduated was the same year that we got married, same year that we had our son. Like we were like, boom, 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 let's get it all out of the way. So I came into the world of adulthood as somebody's wife and somebody's mom. Right. And so not long later, though, in 2009, it was Easter Sunday. And, it was funny because we had actually had an argument that day. And, I didn't want to go out to the country where his family was having an Easter picnic. And I just wanted to stay in bed. I just wanted to stay, just had this feeling I wanted to stay with him. And he was like, no, no, we did Easter with your family last year, so we'll do it with this family this year. And I'm like, all right, fine. So we go, and he we have a good time and we do the things, and the argument is kind of like over a bit, but he's like super nice to me the whole time. Like, he's like we actually dance. like an old-fashioned couple because there's music on or whatever, and we have a really great. Um, and I'm going in with the baby because at the time my youngest is about 18 months old, and my oldest is 7. So my oldest is out him doing the Easter egg hunt and doing the things with other little kids, and I'm in the house with the baby. And my son comes running in, my oldest comes running in and goes, "Mom, Dad fell and he's gonna die." And I'm like, "What are you saying to me, small person?" It's not like computing to me what's happening. And so I go out there, and he's actually on the ground, and he had actually fallen. He tripped running backwards in a relay race, and he had there was some random asphalt. They're on this big lawn. There's random asphalt in the lawn, and of course he finds it. He tripped, hit his head on the asphalt, and in 30 minutes he was gone, just gone. All the scary things happen that you see on like the TV shows where, they roll their eyes back and foam at the mouth and have the seizure. And it was just, I lost it. I completely like shut down and couldn't. I tried to, when the ambulance finally came, which was way too late. And if I had had my cognitive resources with me, at the time, I probably would have sued them. But, we were out in the country in the sticks. They got lost coming there. So it was about, he had been, I felt he was gone from this earth about maybe 20 minutes before they even showed up. So they show up, load him in, and I try to get into the ambulance, and I can't even do that. I pass out. So it's like, I'm just not there. And so there's the guilt there of knowing that he passed technically in the ambulance without me, and I wasn't there. And there's also, all the things that go through your mind, when your husband is passing, like, oh, what could I have done better? Why didn't I do this? And what's going on? And is this real? And what am I going to tell my kids? And so the end of that story is just, I went to the hospital. They told me he had passed. I go home the next day to tell my son, you know, Daddy's not coming home. And he looks at me and he's like, Dad's dead? And for me, that like crushed my whole world. Like his little face, he's 7 years old. At the time, as he's 6 years old. And that's what he says. And I'm like, I can't even form the word, to say, yeah, he is. And I go, no, that's my answer. I say, no, he's in heaven though, and he can't come back. That's the best I could
Wow.
do. And his little serious face, he looks at me and he goes, okay. And I'm like, how are you okay right now? Like, he's holding it together and he gives me this hug and I just fall apart again. And so that experience, obviously very traumatic for me and for them because, he tripped and fell and passed in front of my 6-year-old. It really shut me down. For about 6 weeks, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I just sat like a catatonic person, and I just sat.
So,
And
did you have sort of good family and friend support around you, Maya? Because you got two very young kids.
I did. I had my parents. My parents. I remember. I wouldn't even go home. I refused to go back to my house. So my cousins came and packed up my stuff and put it in, brought it to my parents' house, and I slept between my parents for the next like maybe 6 weeks. I shut down. At the time, I'm 27, so I'm like, this isn't my story. This isn't supposed to happen. How am I going to do anything? To me, he was the better parent. He was 5 years older than me. So, what was he doing in college when I was in college? Well, he was a super senior.
Super senior. Oh wow.
So, yeah. So it was definitely a very life-changing but life-stopping moment for me when he passed, and I didn't do anything. His parents, you were like, are you gonna do the funeral? I was like, nope. They were like, are you gonna pick out his clothes? No, no, I'm not. And that's all I mean, all I had was no. Are you coming to the funeral? Well, that was an interesting question because not so jokingly, he and I had actually made a pact one day. We said, we had gotten into this long, sprawling conversation as we always did, deep thoughts and stuff, because he was my deep thinker. And he said, when I die, just, put me in a box. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it when you die. Like, get out of my face. But he's like, when I die, put me in a box and bury me in the backyard. Like, I don't want a whole lot of, pomp and circumstance around my death. And I'm like, shut up, Jason. So, and then I say, well, I'm not going to your funeral. He goes, I'm not going to yours. I don't want to see you in a box and, and look at you and not be you. He's like, I never want to see that. I don't want that memory. I said, me neither. I never even want to know what that looks like, you in a box in a suit. Like, absolutely not. And he said, well, I'm not going to your funeral. I said, good, because I'm not going to yours. And that was it. We were very, I mean, that was it. And so when it came time, I said, I absolutely cannot go to his funeral. I won't be there. I won't pick out his clothes. I don't even want to know what the coffin looks like. No, thank you, please. I have never to this day been to his gravesite because to me, he's not there. That's not where he is. And so, of course, the family had a big, issue with that, and tried to take my kids to the funeral, and I was like, absolutely not. They don't need to see that either. They're not going to understand. And so I did wind up going to the funeral, all the peer pressure and everything. But what I did was, I sat outside. I had my brother record it. You do the recording for me in case one day I want to watch the ceremony and the sermon, because I hear they were very great. Hundreds of people turned out. Jason was an amazing guy. He was also in a fraternity, so like all of his frat brothers from then, like Bax and Moses and everything, like all of them, they like came and they did this awesome ceremony and everything. And I was like, that's great. I'll sit out here. And that was it for me. That was the best I could do, was sit outside in my, black dress, and everybody's like, "Oh, but you have to have the dignity." I'm like, "Dignity. This is what we're talking about here." And the best I could do, and I talk about it in my book, um, was to show up and to say, while I'm sitting here broken, there's a piece of me that's still alive. It's just, the best I can do to tap into her is to wear these hot pink shoes. And that's what I did. I had on all black,
Oh.
the big hat and everything, but my shoes were hot pink because I had to believe I was still alive in there somewhere. I couldn't find me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew I was there somewhere, and that's all I could do. So
Did you ever watch the recording?
one day I did. Maybe it was about, I think, on the 10 year, maybe about 9 years. It took me 9 years to watch the video, and thankfully, my brother knows me. He went and sat in the highest rafter, the furthest away with his camera so that I wouldn't be able to actually see him in a coffin. Like, it's an open casket, but you can't really see anything. You can just enjoy the sermon and hear the songs and all the things, but you can't. And I'm like, thank you. My little brother looked
And
out
does
for
that
me.
did that always feel like it was the right decision for you? So afterwards, was there at any point you questioned yourself and thought, "Oh, I wish I'd gone"?
No, not at all. I have no desire for that memory. No desire to know what that looks like, because I have, one of those people with a very vivid imagination and, like, photographic memory, eidetic they call it, and I don't want that. It would haunt me forever. No, thank you.
Do you know what, Maya? That is so brave to really break away from everything that everyone expects of us and that we probably expect of ourselves, and to really tap into what felt right for you in that moment and what you needed to do. And that was to sit outside. Did somebody sit with you? Were you on your own?
Yes, I did. I don't remember who, but I believe it was a coworker of mine, Shannon. I think she sat with me. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but yeah,
And could you hear what the service from the inside?
I could vaguely hear it. I could hear, especially my god brother. He's a loud preacher. And so I could hear him, and I could hear the music. There was a live singer, and she sounded beautiful, and that's really all I could hear and was paying attention to, because breathing was, the focus at the time.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and breathing, and not giving in to the many people who walked past me and said, "Just come and see." No, no, thank you. I don't have that in me to do.
Did people really feel that you were making the wrong decision at the time? Did you feel a lot
Of
of
course,
pressure?
of course, especially, and I can, being a mom of sons, I can understand now looking back, and it took me years to get here, but I can understand how his mother may have felt. Like, this is her baby, and if she's got to look at him, and then, the least I can do is stand there and be respectful. But the part that I don't think she would understand, because she didn't lose her husband, is that it's not about respecting what other people want for the moment. It was respecting him. And if it is about respecting him, then this is what we said to this was our pact. This was our thing. And so, I had to respect that, because that was what was, repeating in my mind, that conversation. I was like, even if I had the least bit of curiosity, or I could not fold, I couldn't be like, oh, I'll just, try and stand there and be. No, because this is the woman he loved, the one that had this conversation with him. And if I can't be her and be with him, I'll be her. I'm not going to cry. I'll be her as best I can. I'll be her without him.
I think that's incredible. I do think that's incredible because I've not spoken to somebody that's done that before, or really felt that and trusted themselves that much in that moment to know that that was right for them, and to back it up with action, because it does go against the grain, and we doubt ourselves so much in grief, when we lose our person. So I think, for you to know that was your truth, and to trust yourself in that, and to follow your heart, I think is absolutely incredible. I really do. With you said you shut down and you disconnected, and you moved in with your parents, but you kind of alluded there that, at Jason's funeral there was a little something. There was a little something that represented you, that the bright pink shoes, and as I talk to you now, you've got a bright pink jacket on. You look fantastic. And there is this vibrancy about you, from what I've seen of you online and having spoken to you before. Um, when did you connect with that again? What was it that allowed you to see that and hold on to it, and use it, I suppose, as maybe something to pull you through?
Mm. At the moment, I don't think I could put my finger on it. I think I have always struggled before, um, in my marriage, and before he passed, as a people pleaser. I was always, doing what I felt like was not going against the grain, and, being the Catholic kid, the perfect cheerleader, the all of the stereotypes. I'd always fit into them. But I always had like a pop color. That was always my allowance, my little bit of gotta show up as me. And so whenever, you would see me doing any of the things, there was always a little something different about me. Maybe I'd had, I'm cheering in yellow shoestrings and everybody else is supposed to be wearing white. Or, I'm in ROTC, so I was Navy in the ROTC. And that, don't ask me what it stands for. It's like military training for high school kids. But
I was going to ask.
right. It's a program like, any other extracurricular program for high school kids, and where you basically get to practice being in, the military, because you're going to go. Because my intention was to go to the military, and so my uniform, you'd have to all be uniform, but like, I'd put on earrings or something like like green earrings now. Like, why are you wearing green earrings? Because I'm weird, and it's okay to be a little bit
Colorful. You're
weird.
colorful.
And so that I think was my signature because I was so frustrated with the idea of even getting dressed up to go to his funeral. I was dragged to the mall to go and get a dress and a big fancy hat, and I'm like, this is so not me. I don't want to. But something happened, and I put this in my book too. Something happened at the store that kind of made me like give in, and it was I had gone to the store. We pick out the dress and the hat, and I get to the counter, and I don't have my wallet. I have his. Who knows why? I'm there with my friends, not my parents, so like none of them can afford the stuff that I'm getting. And I don't know why I have his wallet. It's been at least a week. So all of his cards are turned off. Nothing's gonna work. And the sales clerk just goes, just try it. Try because he's like boo-hooing with me, listening to my story, like, well, just try it and see if it works. And his card worked,
Wow.
and I was able to buy the dress and the hat. And it's the second dress he bought me. And I guess the first it's funny because the first thing he ever bought me was a dress because he asked me to participate in a fashion show at the last minute when we were in college. And I'm like, I don't know you. Why would I do that? And he's like, well, we just need one more girl. We need for this scene. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. I barely know this guy. It's fine. I'll just do it. And so I have nothing to wear. And he takes me to Sears. I don't know if they have Sears in the UK, but like
No.
he takes me to this, it's a department store. He takes me and, gets this expensive glittery dress. And I'm just like, okay. So the first thing he bought me was a dress. And so that was the last thing he ever bought me was a dress. And so this dress I still have it, can't fit it even if I lost 100 pounds and held my breath. But, but it's a beautiful dress. Express, very chic, and I love it. But yeah, so the last thing he bought me was also a dress. And so I said, you know what? I will wear the stupid dress, but I am going to also put on something that is me. When I got dressed, I hadn't planned it because they are the hottest pink club shoes you ever would see. They do not belong in anybody's church and should have burned when I got there. But, but while I was getting dressed, I said, you know what? Forget these black shoes. I'm wearing those. If I have to go and I have to wear this mess, I'm wearing those. So yeah, that was my pop color.
I love that. I love that. I think that's such a beautiful story, isn't? I mean, wow, the synchronicities in that, so tragic and sad, but really quite beautiful as well. So, how did you take those first steps then to rebuilding? I'm assuming you had to go back home at some point and parent by yourself and really really think. I mean, what did you really think about it, or did you just naturally have this desire to want to find a way through it, or was there a particular moment or something that triggered something in you?
Um, I quite literally got sick and tired of being sick and tired.
I
And
hear
I
you.
hate that as a cliche, but it's true. You can't really fix you until you're tired of being, whatever is feeling wrong with you. And at first, I felt like it was, like I think a lot of widows feel, where you just felt broken, like you're not
Yeah.
working properly, like something's wrong with you. And it's because nobody else around you can understand and can really relate to what you're feeling. Everyone has a different relationship with him, but no one has the relationship that you have. His parents have their relationship, his siblings have their relationship, his kids have their relationship, but no one knows the version of him that you do. And so it feels you almost feel crazy because you're like, I could have made this up and no one would be the wiser. Like
Yeah.
all the things about him, you feel like, did I make him up? And the feelings that we had and the love that we had, did I just make it up? Because there's no proof of it anywhere. And there's no refuge for you anywhere. You go to church and they tell you, well, lean on God, but they don't really say how. They don't really say exactly how are
Yeah.
you supposed to come here, Mr. Jesus? Like, how do you lean on God?
Yeah.
Raised Catholic, you don't ask why, you don't ask how. You just go to mass and you be a good person. But the rebellion there was I did that, and my husband still died. So like being a good person apparently isn't enough, apparently because it didn't comfort me. It didn't make me feel like this was okay. It definitely didn't make me want to trust God. So it was like, okay, apparently that religion piece is not enough. So what is? And so that's what kind of sparked my interest in figuring out, well, what am I doing here? What else is there? Is this it? Is this it? And just being a zombie, and I started looking for how to fill the space that he left behind with other things. Then I tried, oh, I'm gonna go and do yoga. I'm gonna learn yoga, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna go and learn jujitsu. I did. I actually can, kickbox now. It's pretty awesome. But like, it didn't really, fulfill anything. And I became a serial dater. That was
Yeah.
fun.
I
I
did
went
that.
dating. Yeah, and I got to be somebody else. I didn't have to, if I didn't want to, be this grieving widowed mom. I could just be, oh, I'm, 28. I'm not married yet. That's not like, old. So, I didn't
Yeah.
have to answer to why I wasn't, married. And so, yeah, I did that. And that was, while fun, extremely empty and kind of
Mm.
unfulfilling. And you get out there in the dating world, and you understand why people say there's pee in the dating pool. It's
Yeah.
not fun. you know.
Do you know it isn't, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I reflect back on my journey, and obviously, I sometimes think, oh, you did some really weird, questionable things. Like, what were you thinking? But
Yeah.
and I've give myself a bit of a hard time sometimes because I really did make some really very questionable choices,
Mhm.
and but then I think sometimes you've just got to do what you've got to do to get you from that place to this place that you can
Yep.
then kind of go, yeah, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to go to this place. And it's like these
Mhm.
stepping stones, isn't it? And you like some people, they're propelled into widowhood
Mhm.
and they, from the off, they make amazing choices, and they follow this path and
Mhm.
they go on a journey of self-discovery and it's amazing. I didn't discover coaching, life coaching, any of that till I was about 2.5 years into my journey. So I had 2.5 years of some stupid stuff.
Mhm.
But I really think I had to do that to get me to the place where I was ready then to make
Agreed.
the other choices to take me on that other path.
Absolutely agreed. I did some very interesting things, but I but I lived, like I did what I had to do. And yeah, there was all kinds of, admonishment. Oh, you shouldn't. And oh, it's not been a year and you have to wait until a year to do the things. And, all of
Mm.
the worst advice that came from people that did not have any experience with being widowed at all. And well-meaning, sure, but just off the wall advice. And me rebelling because I'm finally in this space where I have a reason to not be a people pleaser. Like for once, I had a legitimate reason to be like, no, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do
Mm.
because, I'm on the floor here, not you. And
Yeah.
so, that was kind of my first backbone is to like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm gonna see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And series of that had some fun. Doing all of the silly things. Had some fun, and I did wind up meeting my new husband in that quest. So
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 it wasn't full of pee in the pond. There was a golden nugget in there as
yeah, there
well.
was as gross as that sounds, it was a golden
Ah.
make it sound like a kidney stone, but yeah, but yeah,
Oh.
yeah, he was good, and it was funny because he and I did not start out as like this romantic story. Like he was definitely, if people understand the actual meaning behind Boaz, he was definitely my Boaz. And
What's
that's
Boaz?
so in the Bible, there's this lady, and this lady named Ruth, right? And she, and I'm probably telling it wrong because I'm like this is like drunken Bible history here. Like I don't know like all the details. I'm still working on it. But like, she basically her husband dies, and she goes with her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law is like, "Well, you can't go back to where you came from. Like, there's nothing for you there." Well, she actually does tell her to go back, but Ruth is like, "No, I want to go with you. Whatever God you follow, I'm gonna follow him, and whatever you do, I'm gonna go with you." And the woman's own daughter, Naomi, her own daughter, was like, "Nah, I'm gonna go with my other family. I'm not gonna hang out with you." So Ruth goes with her mother-in-law, and they go to this different country or whatever. And there's this guy there, and just like the Lifetime movies, where like widowers are basically just chopping wood, waiting for a new wife. Like this
It's like
guy,
that.
right? This guy was, he's a little older, and he was like not like the most handsomest, whatever. He wasn't romantic. He didn't even want her really, but she was, also going to like the common areas, trying to gather wood and do the things that, but she didn't have money for. But she was like, I'll do whatever it takes to, be able to survive. I have my mother-in-law at home, and there's a bunch of men. They were like, "Oh, you could do, we could take you." And Boaz came and was like, "Yeah, guys, chill. It's fine. Leave her alone." And he looks out for her whenever she goes there, and to the little store to pick up her stuff. And so she's like, she goes back and tells her mother-in-law, he stood up for me. And her mother-in-law is like, "If you don't go get that man, because apparently he's a good man." And she's like, "But I don't love him." And she's like, "Go get that man." And so she goes and takes all of her belongings as like a dowry, and she's like, "I'll be your wife" to him. And he's like, "If you don't get off the floor, like I didn't send for you. I'm old, and like you don't need me." And she's like, "Nope, you can have me, whatever you want to do with me." And he's like, "All right, but I'm gonna do right by you. You're gonna, I'm not the most wonderful man ever, but whatever you need, I'll be there for you. And I'll be your husband. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, and you won't have to be sad or worry. I'll take care of your mother-in-law. Like, it's fine. I'll do what I'm supposed to do." And so he's more utilitarian to her than it is. It's not romantic. It's not, oh, he swept her off her feet, but he decided that he was going to choose her, and that was that. And I say, and people are like, "Oh, I want my Boaz," because they read that passage in the Bible like it's supposed to be romantic. It wasn't.
It's
It
not.
wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't like, he swept out of nowhere. It was very utilitarian. And when we first, my new husband and I, his name is Danny, when we first met, we were friends. And it's so funny because I thought that I knew him, so I get into his like DMs in Facebook, and I'm like, "Don't I know you?" And he's like, "No." So I'm like,
Denial.
right. I'm like, okay. Well, never mind. People I know. And so we start this conversation. We end up like, Facebook friends and just, hi and bye. And one day we get into this rap battle. You heard me. I said it. And so, yes, like neither of us are rappers, okay? But we're like going at it via like Facebook posts, right? So you're supposed to like guess how it was a mess. But it was the first time like we really had a real exchange. And I was like smitten because I'm like, he is goofy and I need somebody like goofy in my life. So, and I think he felt the same way. So eventually we start talking like on the text, and it turns into these long, sprawling conversations. And he's like, "Well, I wouldn't date a woman like you because you have kids." And I'm like, "Oh, I wouldn't date a man like you because you don't have kids, and I don't need anybody experimenting on my children." Like we were both like stalking each other. It was like, so I don't care. And so we go out, and immediately when I see him, he's like way more attractive in person. But like we go to the movies. He does all the things I hate. Like he's wearing a cloud of cologne. Like it was lucky that I could liked it because else I would have been like
Couldn't
absolutely
breathe.
not. Right, I could not breathe. but, but I was like, you lucky I like this cologne. Like he did everything wrong. But at the end of the day, I give him this hug, and I just know he's it. It's him, and I'm like, no. I'm not ready for like marriage or anything, but something in me, I just know. I don't say anything to him. I'm just like, okay. So we carry out this long, drawn out relationship that is really just us being friends and dating at the same time. We're friends with benefits for
Yeah.
like years and years. And then, we are kind of semi-serious and we get pregnant.
Wow.
And yeah, and in that, that exchange, I realized, I'm like we talked about, I'm in the throes of doing stupid stuff, like
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
to be a baby mama, like I don't want to do those things, and he's like, well, so I'm actually thinking of terminating, and he's like, no, I want to be with you. I've been here for your kids. He's been Boaz this whole time. And I'm like, not I'm in denial. Like I don't think I want, I've gotten used to living without a man in my house. I don't really I can only miss you because you leave, So
Yeah.
like when you're
Yeah.
gone, So like I'm
Yeah.
not really ready for that. And so we were thinking of, we were gonna break up because I wasn't gonna have the baby, and he was upset about that. He wanted to be with me. And then I lost the baby. And so that was like a turning point in our relationship where he was one of those guys that like wasn't going to tell me he was in love with me. He wasn't. He just wasn't. He was just going to keep things the way they were, keep stringing
Yeah.
me along like I'm his best friend with benefits, and that was going to be that. And he thought that was fine. And I was like, well, I do love him, but I don't know. So we worked on our relationship for a couple years, and then we were actually in it, and so that's when it became a love story. So that whole 6 years before, because yeah, it was like 6 years where we were just
That's
kind of like in a relationship, but I wasn't telling, like no one knew. When we announced our daughters, because we did get pregnant again a couple years later. When we announced her, it was like, okay, we're coming out. Want the world to know we're actually together.
a
And people
Diana
are like,
Ross song.
right, right. And people are like, who is this man? And I'm like, yeah, we've actually been together for 6 years. I just learned the hard way not to broadcast who I'm dating, and, not to put my business in the street because, you know, another thing about dating when you're a widow is you would be amazed at how many people have all the opinions and want to sabotage and tell you that you're not ready and tell you what you feel. So yeah, like I learned early on, I'm just gonna keep him in my pocket to myself.
You,
So
you,
yeah.
you sound like you're really quite intuitive. You sound like you're very in tune with how you feel, what you believe to be right for you, like what the right path is, the right choices are, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And you know how to follow your instincts, your gut, your intuition, your inner guidance, whatever you want to call it. But it just sounds to me, is that always been like that for you, Maya, or is that something that's developed through this?
I never had a license to actually act on the intuition. Before he passed, it was, I had all these feelings and all these intuitions and all these wishes that I could do what I want to do, but I never felt like I had a license. As the oldest daughter of three kids, I'm the oldest. I have to be the example. I have to stay within these constraints. And I can't ever really do what I want to do, no matter how I feel. So when he passed, it was like a license. Go be you. It was like, the license that people say women get when they go through menopause. When they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to stop giving a shit now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like because
Enough.
I yeah, enough. That was my license right there, my turning point. And all the intuition that I had, I actually felt like I had the freedom to act on it. And every time I acted on it, there was a response that I could like calculate and process and go, okay, well now I want to do this, or I want to keep doing this, or it was like rediscovering myself. This whole time I've been this whole person, and thinking in the throes of grief that, oh, I'm a half a person now without him. And it's like I just finished coaching about that. It's like, you were never half a person. You were half of a union. You were half of a team. But, you this whole time have been a whole person, whether you've utilized those pieces or not. And whether or not you've developed those pieces or even know what they are, you've always been this whole person. And I think a lot of times with widows, we wind up discovering those pieces either by accident or on purpose. But either way, we discover a whole bunch of different pieces we didn't even know were there. And, one of them, this one I knew, this intuition I knew was there, but I never knew that I could just act on it. Like, oh, I can actually do things my way, and it's fine. It's better that way when I do things
Yeah.
my way. I wound up stumbling across, wanting to know more about that. I wound up doing research about personalities, like trying to just, the light gypsy. Oh, let me look at this quiz, and I was really intrigued. By trade, I am a cybersecurity engineer. So, like, none of this tree hugging, meditate, let's get in touch with yourself. None of that was was ever me. But like this was the behavioral science really intrigued me. It was like, I guess for people who are techie like me, it's like, finding the cheat codes to like
Yeah.
human. And I'm like, oh, so I'm reading about the behavioral science of it all. And what I'm realizing is this whole time, this harnessing and leveraging my intuition, this was the reason I was able to be motivated to even do that, was because I was tapping into my core values. And that was, this whole that phrase opened up this whole. I was reading this book called The Happiness Trap and The Confidence Gap. They're the same author. I think Russ Harris, I think his name is. And that whole core values busted open everything for me. And I was like, wow, like this is a whole thing. This is the science. Like there should be, hope there's scientists out there. Like I'm just the only one that discovered it. Like I hope other people know about this. This is pretty cool. you know?
I think, do
Yeah.
you know, I think it's so interesting actually because doing my core values in my journey was pivotal for me. It was huge. And I've actually got like a whole module on it in Finding Hope
Same.
in Widowhood. And we
Yeah.
really go through it because I think, when you really get to grips with, who you are at your core, the essence of you and understanding these different parts of you that need to be seen and expressed and met in some way so that you can experience fulfillment and joy and inner peace, that you just have that trust in yourself that you're on the right path because these things are aligned with you and your truth. So I love that you kind of touch on that because like you, I think it's so important. I know we feel like we are less than when we lose our person, right? We feel like we've lost a part of who we are, and we have to a certain extent. Who we were with our person only existed with that person,
Hmm.
and that's kind of just the law of human nature, right? We're different versions of ourselves for different people, so that version of us can't exist with anyone else. I don't believe, but there are fundamental parts of us that are us, and there are parts that have been ignited in our relationship, but there are also those parts that have maybe been suppressed or pushed away or just not even discovered yet because you've been so busy with all these other areas. And I think when you go through something like this, you do discover so much of
Hmm.
yourself, and
Yeah.
it really does come back to I am still me. I am a whole person. I miss who I was with, my life partner, of course. And that needs grieving and acknowledging and working through. But there's this person that lives within us as well that comes through, that
Hmm.
we learn about and we get to know, right? And quite often blows our mind with the things we're capable of because we haven't had to draw on them before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's so funny. There's an analogy that I do when with my clients, and it's the bucket. And it's like, we've had this bucket and it has water in it. And that's where, our husband was the water. And, for years and years and years, all this bucket ever did was carry this water, and it loved the water. It's, that's its purpose in life, and it carries this water. And then our person dies. And so it's like turning over the bucket. And now the bucket is, to us, it is empty and useless. And for
Yeah.
someone to tell you other things can go in the bucket, you're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Nothing else can ever go in this bucket ever. And then it goes also, the bucket's still wet. Parts of him are still there with you. And they're like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, I see that. Yes, some of them still there. And I'm like, now there's something still in the bucket. There's, looks like air to you, but there that's opportunity. That's the space that you get to grow into. You get to put anything you want to into this bucket, and you can carry it. Guess what? You can carry it. And that realization that you can reuse, repurpose, refill, and do whatever you want to with your bucket, it's life changing. It's completely life changing. And that's what it was for me when I realized that, behavioral science behind it all, because I'm a very logical person. Then I'm kind of like getting into, okay, I'm connecting with who I am, and I'm thinking, my religious part of me is still trying to, like, well, what about me? What do I do with this? And I start thinking about, well, I start exploring other religions and things. I'm like, oh, I'll check out, the Quran, and I'll check out this, and they all basically said the same thing. And it was funny because I thought I was doing something exotic looking at the Torah, and then I found out it was just the Old Testament Bible, and I was like, wow.
Love it.
so, so yeah, but all of that, there's a lot in there about as far as the Bible goes. Mostly it's about the relationship that God and people and Jesus had, with God and all that. And so I'm like, okay, so maybe that's what I'm missing, as far as the connection with faith. And so the behavioral science part of it all let me know that there were parts of me that were there on purpose. Parts of me that are unique, like my core values. Like I could tell you my core values are hopefulness, helpfulness, productivity, and creativity. That's me. But to other people, that would be, it would mean nothing to be productive, or mean nothing to be hopeful or helpful or whatever. But to me, it turns my light on. And that is something that felt supernatural. It felt supernatural to me that I could combine these four things and be like Captain Planet. Like, like,
Love it.
your powers combined. Like I can be like, and everyone has this. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence that
Yeah.
everyone has their own little soup recipe where they can, be whatever it is that they and attack and tackle and handle and carry and, produce anything that they can dream of if they tap into who they are and do that best. And so that's what kind of brought me full circle, because I was like, okay, I see what you did there, God. Like I see what you did there. Like, you're the one that gave me this stuff. And if I had not been these things, I would not have processed them or healed in the way that I did. Apparently, someone like me had to go through this. A person that wasn't creative couldn't go through this. A person that wasn't productive, like didn't have my core values in my specific circumstance, would not have made it. And being able to tap into those things as I heal and move and go forward, I would have never thought that I was supposed to be a life coach. Never in a million years. That's not if someone had told me 20 years ago, oh, you're going to be a life coach and you're going to coach widows, I'd have been like, no, thank you, please. That doesn't sound like what I want to do with my life.
Has no appeal. How did that happen? Where, how?
so, when I wrote my book, the first one, I was basically
What was
just,
that? What was that book?
that one is called Bounce Back Better: How to Win
Bounce
After
back
Great
better.
Loss. And you can even tell in the title, it was never really about widowhood. It was about leveraging your core values to,
Okay.
that's basically was what I learned from core values. That's what that book was about. And when I wrote it, so many people that I didn't expect came to me and said, this is awesome. I wish I had you with me to like walk through the parts of it, because I definitely wrote it like I'm the son of a, I mean, the son, like I'm the daughter of a teacher, because I am. I definitely
Okay.
wrote it like it was instructional. And it had even, it even had Venn diagrams. Like it was that, it was
Love it.
very instructional. And so they were like, man, I wish that, you could sit next to me and do this with me. And, I have your book, but, and they're thinking, oh man, I wish you could do this with me. And so I'm like, I would never do that. I don't really like people that much. Like, why would I do that? Like, I'm a techie person. Like, I like computers for a reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, it turned out that one of the colleges here, Johnson C. Smith University, they actually reached out and they were like, "We want you to come speak about your book." And I'm like, me? I'm an English assignment. Like that's awesome. So
Wow.
like, bucket list. But but yeah, so I did that, and the kids in that class, they're kids, but they were not too much younger than me at the time. They're like, this is so awesome, like teaching people how to be resilient. And I'm like, the feeling I got from people who came to me and was like, my they one guy came to me and was like, me and my wife were going through something, our baby passed away, and this book like brought me through that. And you would think, as
Wow.
utilitarian as this book is, that it would be not soft enough, for, something as sensitive
Yeah.
as a baby passing. It was like, but the way you put things in here to repurpose my feelings and to, to dig into who I am to attack what was going on in front of me, like not to be less me because I'm ashamed of my grief, but be more me to actually attack, and not, in such a violent word, attack, but actually process the
Mm.
thing. I had to be more me. And I never thought of that. I thought I had to be different to get
Yeah.
past the grief. I had to be new and be, move on. I'm like, no. And that word that I use, the next version of you, is a compilation of who you were and what you're learning now, and how to leverage your core values to emote that, to emit that, and to actually use that in the world. And he was like, I never thought of that. So I was like, that's interesting that you say that. And so I decided to write a course. I'm like, I'm good at that. I'm good at tech. I can write a course. And so
Mm.
I built the course, and had no real intention of like being the coach. I just kind of built the course, and based it on the book. I said, this is what you want. And the people that came into the course, of course, they needed the human touch. And so I found myself sitting and crying with these women and going through the course with them and loving it. Like, being the introvert that I am, dreading the call. But once I get on the call, it's like being at the gym. You're like all proud of yourself. You're like, oh, look what I did.
Yeah.
And look how much hope I gave that person, and look how well they're doing, and being so proud of them when they turn corners. And so I decided, you know what? I'm gonna, take some life coaching course. I'm gonna get certified. I'm gonna, see what this is about. And I've loved it ever since. Like it's
Have
my whole
you?
life. I quit my cybersecurity career. I do this full time. This is what I do.
Because you've written 6 books now, haven't you?
So I've written one on my own, and the other 5 are book projects with other widows, where they either came to me with their stories and said, Maya, I can't write, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so
I
I'm
feel
like,
that.
okay, I'll either ghost write, or I'll what I call shadow writing, where they tell me their story and I'm writing it with them. And I do, to not to toot my own horn, but I do have a talent for writing. That's one of my first
Yeah.
passions, is to write. And so, I'm writing their stories for them and with them, and it turned into, oh, well, I'm not a widow, but I've got these 50 women that all want to tell a story about domestic violence or some trauma they went through. And so that was one of the books that I did. And so all of those books have gone bestseller, and I've, either co-written, well, I can't even say either. I've co-written all of them.
I
And
love that.
yeah, so when I say that, I'm a 6-time bestseller, I'm carrying them with me, saying, yes, those books are in my name, or some of them are in their names, and you don't even see my name
Yes.
there. But I love to be asked about them, because I'm like, oh, let me tell you about the Widow Initiative, because that one is an awesome one. Like, that was a widow that wanted to teach ministries how to be a better ministry for widows specifically. And now she has a national program where she's going from church to church, and she's, in demand, where like, structure this ministry so that we're actually helping these widows and not just saying, hey, come on over to the singles ministry or hey, come on over to
Yeah.
the bereavement ministry where we're all just going to be sad, like actual productiveness and support. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great thing to do and to give back. That really is incredible. So now obviously this is your full-time work. You are a widow coach. Do you just support widows or do you support people grieving?
Nope, just widows. I feel like, um, as I guess many platforms as that would create, I do believe that widowhood deserves its own platform. It deserves its own space. Just like, people that lose their moms or someone who loses a child, like those spaces deserve their own space. And while grief, can be described as grief is grief, it helps to connect with somebody who can say, I get you. It helps to be able to, like, that trust of being able to um, manifest what a person who is trying to help you is describing. You have to trust that they know what they're talking about first. I had a therapist that was just grief. And while she was amazing, she had a whole husband at home and had never gone through what I'm going through. So you can't tell me it's okay. You can't tell me, it's going to be okay if you don't really know for sure. It's like having a doctor that's never done surgery saying, it's going to be great. Like, get away from me, please. And so
Yeah.
that trust is not there. And I found that over and over again with my clients that they had had therapy and the therapy was okay. They got to understand their why. But when it came to the how part, they did not trust this therapist could tell them the actual how. They could give them, theories and come up with plans that might work, but they had not done it. They did not know the how. And that's where I felt the widow coach fits in, the how piece of actually living forward and loving your life after loss. So I
Yeah.
think I'll always do those. Hmm.
I think that's a lot of what sort of drove me to it as well. I had therapy and counseling and it had its place, but I wanted the tools, I wanted the mindset shifts, the strategies, the how. Tell me what I can do to support myself. And that's what led me to create what I now do. And I think looking at what you do, very similar, but that whole self-love, the life-changing strategies, manifesting your best life, finding the next you, just the way you word it really kind of speaks to me. It sounds very aligned with how I work as well, and of course you're coming into the program, but just that desire, that because people, yes, when you lose your life partner, it takes you to such a deep, dark, horrible place. I have never known despair and devastation like it. The physical side, the mental side, the emotional side, it's a lot to bear, but you want to find something to pull you through. You don't want this to be the end of your story. You don't want this to be the rest of your story. And it really is that kind of how do I find a way to live again? How do I find out who I'm going to be in this next chapter of my life, and learn to live alongside the grief and give myself permission to live, to bounce back, and not necessarily bounce back in terms of just to who you were, but come back to life, in the person that you are becoming. And really thinking about, who is it, who do I want to become, like how do
Yeah.
I want to feel, and what do I want to create? And I don't think we ask ourselves that enough in life. I certainly never had when Simon was alive. You do life, you bounce from
Hmm.
one thing to another like everyone else does, and that's fine and it works and it's great. But life throws you a curveball,
Hmm.
and to put it politely, and I think it's at that point, when you go to your deepest, darkest places, that you kind of think, I need to take stock here. I'm going to ask myself the big questions. And for me, it, you know, this whole journey has been transformative. It really has. And I think it's led me to this version of myself that I don't, would I have found her had Simon lived? I don't know. I can't answer those questions, but I, you know, what I have now and who I am now, um, I'm really proud of, and I'm actually really grateful that I showed up for myself, you know, and I did the things that got me to this point, because life is good, it's beautiful, and I'm genuinely at peace. I'm very happy, and that's not somewhere I thought I'd ever get to
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That you said you are grateful that you showed up for yourself, because that's a really hard sentence to finish when people are asking you, well, what do you have changed anything, or where you are now, and they're almost daring you to say you're grateful he died. And it's like,
Yeah,
no, that's not, that's never going to be the, how you feel. But it is hard almost to be happy in your next you and be okay with being happy, because you have to at some point admit that it's either better or the same, and what someone wants you to compare it. And it's like saying it's completely different is not enough for people, but
yeah,
um, that fear of coming into your own and having something else that could be just as great or even greater, that is part of not being able to imagine being happy again. That's part of
yeah,
that doom that you feel when you're like, I'll never be able to fill this bucket again. Like, I'll never be happy again.
yeah,
And yeah, the guilt is part of it. And I can definitely agree with you. I am so grateful that I showed up for myself. I'm
yeah,
so happy now in my life, and it was because I showed up for myself. I don't think I ever would have, honestly. I think I was so, um, I don't want to say consumed, and I don't want to make it seem like it was a bad thing, but I loved my husband.
yeah,
Like, he was my whole life, and my kids and our little microcosm. I had no need and no reason to be anything more than Jason's wife and Nikki and Justin's mom. Like,
yeah.
no reason at all. And I think, you know, I was always meant to be the whole person, but I wasn't going to tap into it myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that eventually I did. I did.
It's really interesting what you say there, actually, because my daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 14 now. She was 5 when her dad died. And she was sat in the kitchen the other day and she said to me, Mum, if you could go back to when I was born,
Mm,
what would you do differently? What would you change? And I said, oh, that's a big question, Ella. And I sat with it for a bit and I said, well, I don't know that I'd change anything. She said, well, there must be something you'd want to change. Like, would you change my name? Would you change some of the choices? And I said, well, I said, I don't, I don't think I would. And then she said, well, would you not change it then so that when Dad died, that he was outside the hospital so that he could have been saved? And I said, thing is, Ella, I've spent I did spend a lot of time in my grief wishing I could have changed things. Do you know, like, you want to go back, right? You want to notice the things that you didn't particularly notice. You want to change the outcome of the events. You want to change the things that you did on the run up, thinking that you had some kind of power over what happened and you could have changed it.
mhm,
And I said to my daughter, I said, you know what? I've spent a long time in my journey of trying to rebuild my life after your dad died, do not wishing that I could change things, because the whole time that you're wishing you could change something, you are fighting your reality. You are not sitting in the present moment and allowing yourself to live, because the whole time you're wishing it was different. You're wishing you made different choices. You're wishing there was something else. And I said, and I've worked really hard to not be that version of me, because the whole time I'm doing that, I'm not being present and I'm not living. And I said, and I'll tell you something, I honestly think right here and now I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And maybe that's not the right thing to say as somebody whose husband dropped down dead. And I don't mean that I'm happy and happier because Simon died.
right.
I'm that's not it. I wasn't unhappy when Simon was alive, but I think life, it's such a cliche, right? It's a journey, and we're always growing, we're always evolving, we're always pushing ourselves. And isn't that what it's about? That we're here to learn, to grow, to evolve, to adapt, and to learn about ourselves, and to just be that little bit better each time, so that we can find more inner peace and find more joy and be freer, rather than living by the constraints of the things that happen to us, or what society thinks we should be, or how we're told we should be by caregivers and stuff. So I think she was quite surprised by my I wouldn't change anything. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't, because if I changed one little thing, Maya, in my life, I wouldn't be here now. And yes, I've been through some really shitty stuff, but even if I'd gone back and changed things, I would still have gone through some really shitty stuff, right? Because nobody's getting out of here
Pretty
without
much.
that.
Without the shitty stuff.
That's life, isn't it? Like, and
Yeah.
and it is shitty, but I don't know. I think she was. I could tell she said, "Mum, that's a really disappointing answer. I really thought you'd kind of give me things that you'd go back and change." But honestly and genuinely, I'm actually quite proud of the fact that is my truth. And it
Mm,
is, and that doesn't mean I don't wish Simon hadn't died. Doesn't mean that I don't wish he was here to watch his children grow. And my children, had a dad.
mhm,
But I can't. I don't have the power. I can't do that. That's not within the realms of possibility for me.
and I love that that was your answer, because isn't that the goal, to be able to look back on your life and say, I wouldn't change a thing? Like, that's the goal, to
I
be
think
able
so.
to both go through the shitty times, to be able to bounce back sometimes and maybe sometimes not. I think that's the goal. And I think that, you could maybe add on if you tell her later, I think that's a life that maybe when you look back one day, you're going to be an adult and you're going to have your kids and your everything, and you're going to look back and realize without the shitty things, the good things weren't going to be possible.
Yeah,
They needed
yeah,
that. You needed to be motivated. You needed to be held for this moment, held up. You needed to be all the things so that you can be
yeah.
where you are. And
Yeah. Yeah. And had somebody said to me at the beginning after Simon died that would be my truth, and one day, I'd say I wouldn't change anything, I'd never have believed them, because of course,
ever,
it's I'm coming up to 9
never.
years, and it took a long time. There were times when you'd do anything, wouldn't you, to change it?
Mhm.
Absolutely
Yep.
anything. You
Yep.
you would. Um
Hmm.
and it's just, it shifts and it changes, and you find a way. You do find a way. Oh, Maya, it's just been the most incredible conversation. As always, with these conversations, I could sit here and chat to you for a very long time. Um, it's
Thank you
it's
so
it's
much for having me. It's been an amazing conversation, and I
it
knew it
has
would be, But yeah, it's been amazing.
two very sort of similar souls, I think. And we'll share in the show notes so people can find you. Maybe that there's links. I know you're the Bounce Back Widow on Instagram, and
Yeah.
we can share links so people can find you, and give you a follow and get in touch and what have you. But thank you for your time, thank you for being here, and I so look forward to welcoming you into Finding Hope, and sharing you with my community in there as well, Maya. So bless your heart. Thank you very, very much, and we'll speak to you again soon, I'm sure.